Okay, so let's get down to let's talk about areola like a little bit.
All right.
So I do areolas, but not at your. I mean, you're like the area. I mean, that's just like your specialty. It's just something that you do. I do quite a bit of them, and I've been doing them a lot of years. But yeah, you're Stacey Ray. So how long? This is always a debate that I see online on Facebook. How long after their last surgery, their very last surgery they do with their plastic surgeon, like restorative surgery, how long is an appropriate wait time before the tattooing should take place?
Right. Yeah, this is a super common question, and there is no answer for it. So what I find is what I keep trying to get across to people is there is no right or wrong. It really depends on the body, and the body will let you know. So the easiest way to know what the body is telling you is if it's red, don't tattoo it.
Right.
Now, so on me, when I had my mastectomy and I had a breast implant reconstruction, but I ride horses, and the weight of the implants and the motion of the horse riding, because I don't ride no like amble down the sidewalk horses. I ride rodeo horses, like high tech, high performance horses. So that kind of impact pulled my scarring apart, and my scars were red for about 6 years. Almost 6 years. So for me, that's 6 years. But if you ask my surgeon, who doesn't know anything about tattoos at all, his receptionist does his tattoos and botches people left, right, and center, he would say that I was ready in 3 months.
Yeah.
So, and then a common thing that I hear in the industry is like, oh, 1 year, but maybe, but not on me.
Right. Exactly.
So that can't be a rule, right?
Right. Because if the scar is still red, then the body it's being fed, right? It's being fed and nourishment and healing, and so that is a rule of thumb here. A year, unless they're still red, and right. So okay, so that does that. And what about radiation?
So radiation is incredibly challenging. So it
extremely.
It destroys the skin. The skin will never fully recover. Sometimes it's really vascular looking. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes it looks thin. Sometimes it doesn't. It's really hard to know how much radiation damage is done from the surface of the skin. That's another one. I'm like, there are no hard answers for any compromised tissue.
Right.
So you got to be ready for anything. I would say that the first thing is never use a liner on radiation.
Yeah.
That'll be a win right off the bat. You never want to use like a tight needle grouping on radiation.
And tell me, and I know why, but I think there's, like you said, we said it earlier, just so many people in PMU that are picking up needles and tattooing clients have no clue about needles. They don't understand needles.
Yeah.
And so what is it about?
Do you think we could talk Tat Soul into letting us do like some education around that, or like something needs to happen?
Well,
here,
it's so funny. I have an online needle course. The needle and the prick.
Oh, awesome.
And
I was looking at some of your courses. I think like I brushed across it, but I'll definitely go take a look at that. That's awesome.
Yeah, thank you. I'm just going to upload you so you can check it out. But liners, definitely not a liner on tissue like that. But a lot of people don't understand that.
Yeah. So here's what it is, you guys. So here's your godmotherly advice from old school Stacey Ray here. When the needles are close together, when there's not a lot of room in between the needles, the way that I like to teach this is when there's room in between the needles, it's forgiving for 2 reasons. One of the reasons is because skin can fit in there. So a tight grouping like a liner, the skin can't fit in there. And so something as damaged as radiated skin, is just going to be destroyed. It's going to be shredded.
Yeah.
Shredded. There's
Yeah.
no other way to say it. The second reason that this is forgiving is that the solder is usually pulled further back up the needle bars, and that gives some flexibility. So not only is there space between the needles, but now the needles can move around a little bit.
Yeah.
So then it's forgiving. So compromised tissue has some room to tolerate the perforation.
Right. Exactly. In my needle class, I kind of explain it. Same thing. I show a 5 liner right next to a 5 shader. And yeah, those liners, you solder it up so hard, it's like cinching like a trash bag,
Yeah,
right?
it is.
They're rigid and they're tight, and they don't flex or move on the skin. Where a shader, as you're doing movements, because the solder is much further down, right? It's a loose needle. It opens up and it flexes on the skin. Kind of like, those mops with all the strings. You know, when you do a mop in and out and those little strings that barely dampen, right? That's kind of like a shader. It's just, it's gentler on the skin.
So I'm going to tell you guys something from our time, because we're both kind of old school. 20 plus years, that puts us in the old school.
Yeah.
Does it? I'm not sure. I'm freaking old school. I know that. So back then, it was commonplace. She's going to laugh when I say this. I know that. Back then, it was commonplace to finish lining your needle and then take a lighter and...
Yes.
What did you do with your lighter, Terry?
You tell him first, Stacy. I didn't say I did it.
So the solder comes down the needle bar, right, to hold the tip of the needles. If they're really tight, like if it's a super tight, then the soldering comes down further to make sure that they stay in that configuration.
Right.
The further back the soldering is, the more movement that there is, and you can't really line with something that's this flexible. So we would finish doing the outline and then just be like, hold the lighter up and open up that solder. Yeah. And we're like, it's a shader now. Here we go. Off to the races.
Yeah. Well, I would make some, when I first started needle making, and my shaders weren't quite shaders. And he told me they're kind of like in between, almost liners, And yeah, he would take the match, the lighter, and move that solder down,
melt it
right down the needle.
So
and voila,
let's talk about. I got a question for you.
What's that?
How many times did you burn your eyeballs out of your head with flux and solder on your fingertips?
How about are you crazy? Yes. And maybe
and you guys out there with your we're on the uphill both ways to school kind of train here right now. You guys don't even know how good you have it.
They have no idea. I mean, cartridges weren't even a thing back then. They were a thing in PMU. They were not a thing 20 years ago in really body tattooing.
They couldn't really make a reliable rotary machine, right? Like it took a while for them to figure out how to make a reliable rotary machine that had didn't have a lot of
And I think it was
movement.
Bishop, wasn't it, Franco, who really kind of did with that V6, one of the first ones.
Sure. The first one that I remember really liking was the Neotat.
The Tap Tap Daddy-O Neotat. Yeah, I met him. I liked him. I believe his name was Ray. I think his name was Ray, and he taught a needle class. Yeah, I took he had a little needle class that he would kind of do. Yeah, the Neotat. So you're right. But I remember that being a little heavy and a little bulky for me.
Like a coil.
Like a coil. Mm-hmm. And then I remember Bishop came out with the V6. And that I ended up really, really liking that. But yeah, that solder was a bitch. And it's hysterical.
It'd be 3 days before this stuff came out of your eyeballs, and you'd be doing, and the stuff's
we should have been wearing goggles, Stacey.
Yeah, probably the goggles would have been a great idea.
Well, if you read the
bottle, it would have been splattering. So of course you're getting itchy, and you go like this, and then it's over. You got 3 days of misery.
Yeah, and your fingertips are all burnt to hell. Yeah, you get scar tissue on it. I think I ended up getting scar tissue on a couple of them. And on my thumb right here, it's still there, even though I haven't used a stainless steel grip or a coil in many years. But man, I had the big old lump there, the big old, what do you call that? Callus. Mm-hmm. And I remember one time all of us, Eddie was like, yeah, let's put all the thumbs out. Let's see who's got the biggest, ugliest callus. But anyway, yeah, they got it really easy nowadays. But back then,
But you know what it does is it gives them so much time and energy to focus on the craftsman side
That's
of things,
right.
the technical side of things, and drawing. So where this has leveled up the body art world is now that body artists have all these things taken off their plate. They don't have to scrub tubes. They don't have to make needles. Now the artwork is going through the freaking roof because they're putting all of that time and love into their pieces.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, 100%. And same with the PMU industry, the talent, the skill level. You're seeing that, just go up and up and up
like
too.
some of the eyebrows, like Shaughnessy, this girl Shaughnessy, she took my Areola course a while back, but she is like an art school grad.
Yeah.
The eyebrows that she's doing, I'm like, how is that even possible?
Yeah, there's some great works.